Good day, students. It's class time, your daily session for CSEC and CAPE students. Today we will look at economic systems. Now, as we get started, let's look at our objectives that we intend to accomplish today. We call them our attainment targets, and the first one is that for today's lesson, we should be able to define the concept economic system. We should also be able to explain the three basic economic questions. By the end of the lesson, we should identify at least 3 of the 4 economic systems and be able to differentiate among the types of economic systems. We should also be able to give examples of countries within which each economic system exists. And our final objective that we will be accomplishing today is that we will be able to discuss the characteristics of each economic system. So let's get started. Now, the first thing we're going to start off with today is a brainstorm. Let's look at our brainstorm question. So I want you to bear this question in mind and think of an answer. Maybe you have been exposed to economic systems before. Let's see. So our brainstorm question of the day is, what economic system exists in Jamaica? So we live in Jamaica. What do you think? So think about this question as we go throughout our lesson today. You might find your answer. So we'll come back to this question at the end of our lesson. So to get started, we are going to be looking at the definition of an economic system. So we say an economic system is an organized way in which a state or nation allocates its resources and apportions goods and services in the national economy. And if you remember the definition of economics, you'll realize that some of it is brought out in this definition, because in the study of economics, we say that we are looking at how an economy, how we all are able to create wealth from scarce resources, how we're able to allocate scarce resources to satisfy all the unlimited wants and needs that we have. So we're going to be looking at, within this system, what are some key questions that an economic system is really based on? So we call these our 3 basic economic questions. And the first one is what to produce. Within an economy, this is one key question that we have to find the answer to. What is it that we're going to produce for the economy? How are we going to carry out that production? And for whom are we producing? And you will realize that as we go throughout this lesson, that for each economic system, we may be identifying, okay, how each system decides what to produce, how they decide how to go about that production, and how they decide for whom to produce. So let's explore the types of economic systems. Before we do that, let's look at our description of each economic question. So the first one, what to produce. Let's explain how it is that economic systems decide what to produce. Firms and government must decide what goods and services are to be produced. And the economy has to decide whether only needs will be satisfied or both wants and needs will be satisfied. And you'll realize that as we go further into the lesson, we'll come back to what to produce. When we talk about the various economic systems, we will identify how do we decide what to produce based on the structure of those systems. Our second economic question is how to produce, and firms and government must also decide on how goods and services will be produced. The methods may be capital intensive or labor intensive. What's the difference between capital and labor intensive? So if we look at the question first of how to produce, government and firms may decide to either use more people, more human labor in their establishments, or they may choose to use more capital goods, more machinery, to carry out production. So if any firm or government chooses to go the route of using machinery, we say that's a capital-intensive type of work environment. So the machinery, there may be a greater use of machinery to carry out the work in that place. While in a labor-intensive type of work environment, we have more hands-on, more physical individuals present in the workplace carrying out jobs instead of machinery. So we will look at these economic systems and see, is there any motive? Is there any reason some economic systems would decide to go capital intensive while others may go labor intensive? And our third major economic question is for whom to produce. And we say that economies must decide how the goods produced will be shared amongst the members of society. So in looking at these types of economic systems that we will explore next, we will look at the fact that some of these systems decide for whom to produce, and some goods are distributed based on the ability to pay the price of those goods. So some of these goods, especially goods that are considered to be wants, are really sold based on person's ability to pay for it. Another concept that we consider is that other goods are distributed based on need. For example, the government may subsidize housing, and it's because it's considered to be one of those basic needs. Some goods are distributed free of charge, like the goods we consider to be public goods or merit goods. And you can look up these two concepts. We say that public goods are the goods that are collectively consumed. So my use of that good doesn't really hinder your use of the good. It doesn't hinder you from benefiting from it. For example, street lights. So we know that in some economies, these are things that the government may provide to us. This is that service or good that we enjoy free of cost. And in other cases, they may produce merit goods, and these are goods we say that we don't pay the true cost, or the true benefit of the good outweighs the cost of it. So merit goods, for example, education and healthcare, like in Jamaica, we have a subsidy that is provided in these areas, or we consider these two services to be free. So in some cases, for whom to produce, these are some things that we do consider. Let's look at the meat of the matter, the economic systems. So the first economic system we have here is the traditional economic system. And if you were listening last week, you would have heard us describing the subsistence economy, and it's the same economic system, the traditional economy. Then we have our command economy. We're going to explore that as well. From there, we will move over to our free market economy. And then we'll establish the concept of the mixed economy, and we're going to be looking at not just the meaning of these systems, but we'll also explore what are the features, what are the identifying features. If we hear the description of an economic system, can we identify that, oh, this is a command economy, this is a free market economy, it's a mixed, or it's considered a traditional economy. So we're going to start off first with the traditional economy. Based on our lesson last week, if you tuned in, you will realize that our traditional economy actually is the same as the subsistence economy. And it's an economic system that is self-sufficient. So within that system, it really thrives on direct production like farming, fishing, animal rearing, hunting, and those self-sustaining activities that are necessary to provide for the family, and just in case there is surplus, they may do trading like barter. So that economic system, they do not use money, and their trade is done by barter. Now, in the 21st century, in today's world, we may rarely find some economic systems that are considered traditional, but there are still some isolated tribes that are located like in Asia or Africa or in South America that are considered to be a traditional economy. Okay, let us now look at some features of the traditional economy so that just in case we hear a little description of this economy, we can identify that, yes, this is a traditional economy. So first and foremost, we said that they do not use money. The primary system of trade is barter. So they trade goods and services. And private individuals own and allocate resources. Another key feature is that the ownership of these resources are actually based on what has been passed down through ancestry. So the basic resources that are owned by individuals in this economy, it can be a plot of land, it can be the instruments that they use to carry out their work. All of these are actually passed down. The skills that they have within this type of economy are really passed down or taught from generation to generation. Some additional features: resource allocation decisions are based on tradition. So deciding what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce is really easier within this economic structure, because these resource allocation decisions have been really passed down through generations. As you would imagine, there's actually no formal government, although some of these settlements may have like a leader who is in charge of their tribe or in charge of their settlement. But there's no formal government with parliament or with a House of Representatives or a Senate. The economy is considered to be closed, and a closed economy is that which that doesn't really engage in international trade. So when an economy is considered closed, it is really self-sufficient. It doesn't import or export. So as you can imagine, the traditional economy doesn't engage in international trade. Let's look at our second type of economy, and that's the command or planned economy. Now, if you tune into news, especially international news, you would have heard of the planned or the command economic system. Let's explore what this is all about. So this is an economic system within which the decisions of what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce is controlled by the government. It may also be known as communist economies, or you may hear the reference of communism or communist countries. And once you've heard that term, some countries might start popping up in your minds. In these types of economy, the government is in control. So the government is in control of the production of goods and services that everybody in the population uses. And the government is also in control of other state-owned, normal state-owned activities that you would expect the government to be in control of, like in Jamaica. However, they're in control of a lot more than what the government would be in control of here in Jamaica. They're in control of what businesses in Jamaica would be in control of. That is the production of goods and services. So here we have two examples of Kim Jong-un and Miguel Diaz-Canel. These are, the supreme leader of, we have the first one is the supreme leader of North Korea, and we have the president of Cuba. And these are leaders of command economies or planned economies. Now, you may want to really think on how is it that the government goes about a total control, not only in charge of setting laws that we follow, but they're also in charge of producing the goods that we need and providing all the jobs for the entire population. Let's look at some of the features of the command economy. And living in a different type of economic system, we're not going to say just yet what economic system we currently live in or exist in, but you'll find out later. So the command economy, let's look at some features. And in looking at these features, you may not be able to relate, but these are some features of the command economy. And in this economy, we said before that the state owns all the factors of production and business units. The government assumes complete responsibility for the economy. It is responsible for, as we mentioned earlier, making laws, providing infrastructure, and it also engages in production. And there's no private sector. So we don't have private individuals who are starting up businesses and becoming entrepreneurs. So within this economic system, all the businesses that are established are really done so through the government. Now, the features of the command economy continues. The state, through the planning central agency or authority, does the resource allocation, and all workers are employed by the state. There's a restriction on choice, as you would imagine. If the government is in control over the goods that are produced, the goods that are used to satisfy our wants and needs, it seems as if the government is in control, they would really provide those goods that are considered to be needs. And that is exactly what exists in most command economies. There's a provision of goods and services that are considered to be the essentials. So other things that are considered to be wants are not necessarily provided within these types of economies. Therefore, we say that one characteristic is that there's a restriction on choice. So the government, unlike in an economic system where the private companies would really look out to see what goods are really in demand and what goods I can make a profit off of. Unlike that structure, in the command economy, that is not observed. Therefore, it's really the necessities that are being provided, and there's no profit motive within the structure. So there's a restricted choice for consumers since the government controls what goods are produced. Let's look at some additional features. Prices are fixed, and if there are shortages, instead of price hiking due to shortages, there's a rationing, because we know that it is, especially in our economy, if there is a shortage of certain goods and services, there is a modification to price, right? So, for instance, right now, tomatoes are scarce, and the last time I've been to the market, it was $500 per pound. $500 per pound for tomatoes. So it means, therefore, that in our economic system that we have in Jamaica, if there is shortage, there's a price increase. But in the command economy, we have where shortages exist, it doesn't spark a price increase. Instead, there's a scale back where there's a restriction on how much one person can buy. So that's what we consider as rationing. There are no shareholders in companies, and production is not profit driven. So because the state owns all the factors of production and they're engaged in the providing the goods that are needed by the society, they're not really motivated by profit. The aim is to ensure that there's a satisfaction and everybody in the society is provided for. Let's look at some additional features. Let's go back one step, and just there's an additional feature within the command economy. One of the motives of the government is to really provide jobs. Therefore, the economic questions such as how to produce in a command economy, how to produce, that question is really easily answered within this structure. Why? It is the motive of a command economy or the government within this system to ensure that jobs are provided, just like within any other system. However, instead of using machinery that would probably speed up production, the aim of the government within this economic structure is to ensure that there's full employment. Those who are able to work, they're fully employed, gainfully employed. And within this system, sometimes in some command economies, there's not really a freedom of choice as to where you want to work and the type of job you want to aspire to really grow, what you want to grow up to be, and what role you want to really play in society. So there's really not much freedom of choice as to where you work in some command economies. And moving on to the free market now. So the free market is like a total flip of the command economy. So it's an economic system in which private individuals own and allocate resources. It is also referred to as a capitalist or a laissez-faire economy. Now, if you think about the definition, the first sentence that we just went through, an economic system in which private individuals own and allocate resources. Think about the definition. There's actually no truly, purely free economy within our world as we know it today. However, the closest examples that we have are the US and Indonesia, and there may be others as well. There are others, but these economic systems, we say that they're close to being market. We consider them to be a free market economy, but they're not purely free market. And this is because the government has some intervention into providing some of those goods to the population. So it is also referred to as a capitalist or laissez-faire economy. This means that private individuals own and operate firms and therefore decide what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. So you see, with this economic system, unlike the command economy, this system is profit-driven. So imagine private individuals, you and I, your parents, grandma, uncle, auntie, private individuals engaging in production. We're going to want to decide what are we going to produce based on what is going to sell, what goods and services are in great demand, what resources we currently have, to really embark on the production of certain goods or services. So these resource allocation questions, when answered by private individuals, like how to produce. In the free market economy, how to produce is really decided upon based on the availability of resources as well as how expensive it is to go either capital intensive or labor intensive. So in the free market economy, the private sector, these private individuals may decide to go into a capital intensive type of production because it might make better sense. It may be more profitable for them to really venture into production that way. So they may use up more machinery in their assembly line, in their manufacturing process or service delivery. And if labor intensive seems to be cheaper or suits that particular structure better, that company, that firm, a little better, they may choose to go labor intensive. Now, the features of the free market economy, let's look at a few of them. And I've mentioned some of them already. We say that private individuals own all the factors of production and business units within a free market economy. The government assumes the responsibility of making laws within this structure and providing infrastructure. So in a completely free market economy, all the goods and services we need. Think about the food we eat, the cars we drive, electricity, water, every good and service that we consumed are provided by privately owned entities, while the government assumes the responsibility of setting the rules of law that us households and firms should abide by, and also providing the key infrastructure that are needed by society. So the private sector owns and allocates resources. We've established that as well. Here are some additional features of the free market economy. Resources are allocated based on the forces of demand and supply. So, as we mentioned earlier, in the free market structure, based on where the demand is for products or how much, in what volume these demands exist, entities may really venture into or increase the production of some goods. And as the demand decreases, and you know that you watch consumer behavior and people are kind of moving away from certain goods, you know, these entities reduce the production of those goods. So take, for example, when floppy disks were in. I'm not sure, as a student, a fourth form student, you probably may be familiar with floppy disk by looking at pictures, or there may be some lying around the house, or you learned of it in information technology. But let's say that, let's use that one example. When floppy disks were in demand, or were in, people were buying floppy disks because, you know, students at school need it, in the office we need it, at home we need it to store information. But as less and less people demanded it, those companies had to go back to the drawing board and see, all right then, where's the market trending? What are people buying instead? And we might have shifted away from that to the memory cards. Well, first it was the flash drives. And then you realize that these private individuals, they follow where the market leads. So supply as well, resources are allocated based on the forces of supply. If the raw materials are easy to come by, if they are more affordable, or if they get, well, in those cases, we can venture into the supply of those goods or to increase the supply. But if it is that raw materials have become completely expensive, and we may not be able to really cushion the effect of price increases of the raw material and other factors that, you know, influences supply or impact supply, it may cause those private individuals who are in production to scale back on the production of those goods as well. Producers are guided by a profit motive. And we've said that already. If that's where the income is really forthcoming, that those business activities, the provision of goods and services, if they are income generating, we may have producers being pushed to produce those goods, especially if we can earn profits from them. There's a freedom of choice for consumers. And you see, as you look at this feature, think back on the feature. There's an opposite feature to this in the command economy, where we said that there was lack of choice, because in the command economy, the government producing what we are using in society, so they may not really hit the nail on the head in providing the things that people are really demanding, because they're providing the necessities. But in the free market economy, we have a freedom of choice of consumers. We have all the things we want and need, because private individuals are engaged in the production and supplying of goods and services, and they're really providing to consumers what they are demanding. So we have a greater satisfaction within the free market economy. Workers can also choose whatever occupation they wish, as well as for whom they work. One final feature of the free market economy is that there is consumer sovereignty. And I think we've mentioned this somewhere along the way before in another feature. This is where consumers' purchase or failure to purchase goods determine which goods are produced and in what quantities. And we've mentioned that already. So we said that if it is that consumers are trending are demanding a certain particular good, moving away from other goods that are being produced, the producers may have to go back to the drawing board and kind of tweak their production, maybe lesser output of one good, and pool their resources into the production of another good, if needs be, based on the demand by consumers. So now we're moving on to the fourth economic system, and it's the mixed economy. So if you look at the concept, it's called the mixed economy. Let's look at a mix of what? So it's a little mixture of both a government control and firms, private individuals. So it's somewhat of a little touch of some of the features of the command economy, and a little touch of some of the features of the free market economy. So this economic system has a private and a public sector. And it says this is an economic system within which both private individuals and government own and allocate resources. So we have a little bit of both. This system consists of, we said that, private and public sectors, and some examples are close to home. Like we currently live within an economic system that is considered to be mixed. Barbados and Dominica are also examples of Caribbean countries. And there are other Caribbean countries that we can also relate to that have the mixed economy. Now, let's look at the features. And I know in looking at the features, you will be able to relate because this is what exists around us. Oh, before we do, remember, we had a brainstorm. Let's look back at the brainstorm. So based on the description of our mixed economy, you should realize by now that the economic system that exists in Jamaica is actually a mixed economy. Let's look at the features now. So we say that in a mixed economy, the government provides a framework of laws. So let's look at the role of the government first, and then we look at what do firms do. In a mixed economy, the government also focuses on providing public and merit goods. And remember, we established those two concepts before, the concept of public and merit goods. And the government also may engage in providing other goods deemed necessary, for example, transportation, or they may subsidize like the provision of certain goods and services that the government see that they're in great demand, and maybe the supply of those goods are threatened. Like the government might subsidize the production of rice and flour because those are in high demand in Jamaica. I think it's also done in Trinidad and Tobago. So let's look at some other features. The private individuals produce based on a profit motive. So we have two sides here at play in the mixed economy. On one side, the government is engaged in setting laws. The government is also engaged in the provision of some goods and services. And on the flip side, firms are also engaged in the production of goods and services. Now, if you look at what goods and services both sectors produce, you'll realize that the government aims to produce what are considered to be essential, and there's no profit motive when the government provide those goods and services. On the other side, within the same economy, when private individuals produce, they are producing on a profit motive, and therefore they produce based on the volume of demands on certain goods. The government may subsidize the production of some goods. We mentioned that already. Okay, so now it's trivia time. Let's do a little recap to see how well we would have learned these objectives or met the objectives. So our first trivia question is, what economic system is predominantly existent in Caribbean economies? I just gave you the answer, you know. Let's see if you can find it in this list. Is it A, the free market, B, mixed, C, traditional, or D, command? Think about it. I literally just gave away the answer. So if you say D, no, not D, B, sorry, B, the mixed economy, you're correct. B as in boy, you're correct. Let's look at our second trivia. Which of the following will not take place in a free market economy? Is it A, government ownership of factors of production of goods and services? Is it B, private ownership of the factors of production? C, a profit motive determining how resources are allocated? Or D, producers being motivated by profit? Okay, and the question, let's repeat it because some of the answers are long. Which of the following will not take place in a free market economy? So a free market, remember what we said, even though we don't really have a completely free market economy, but there are some that are very close. So if you say A, you're correct. So in a free market economy, it says which of the following will not take place, and that's where government owns the factors of production of goods and services. Let's look at our next trivia. Rationing. Rationing is a feature of which type of economic system? Is it the traditional economic system, the command or planned economic system, the free market economy, or the mixed economy? Remember we said, think back at this one. Remember we said in this particular economic system, you know, ladies and gentlemen, if there is scarcity, prices don't go up. Instead, there's a rationing that takes place. If you're thinking of B, as in B for boy, you're on the right track. Good job. All right, and the final trivia, which is not a feature of the traditional economic system, and our answer here is D, government ownership and control of resources. Okay, so these are the objectives that we attained today. I hope that you learned something from our lesson today and you're able to distinctly identify the various types of economic system as well as being able to differentiate between any two. That's it for CSEC POB.